So there it is, Alvaro Morata becomes the first signing of Milan's transfer window. Joshua Zirkzee is headed to Manchester United, leaving some Milan fans asking, wait, how were they able to get a discount on the agent's commissions? I'll explain to you how. We'll also look at how Milan continues to rely on Fofana's will to join Milan to get a discount from Monaco, and are now relying on Pavlovic's will to get a discount from Salzburg. And in a surprising twist, Gianluca Di Marzio reports Niclas Fullkrug has agreed to join Milan. These are some of the profiles we're going to be looking at in today's episode of Rumor or Real. Kicking things off with the transfer of Alvaro Morata, the captain of the Spanish team that just won the Euros, to Milan. Now, when it comes to the Morata move, the Milan fan base is sort of split into cliques here. One group that feels like this is an underwhelming move, another group that feels like this would actually really help the team. The camp that I fall in, the one that thinks this is actually going to be a good move for Milan. I think far too often, football fans get fixated on price tags. If they don't see a high price tag, they somehow undervalue the move. I've seen this, in a lot of the comments that I've seen in the previous videos. Oh, we're just going after an attacker that costs less than 15 million euros. This can't possibly be a good move for Milan. He's also 31 years old. We're looking at these stats. We're looking at his price tag. We're looking at his wage. And we're just making a complete assessment that this is a bad move. We're not looking at what he actually brings to the team. If you watch the Euros final, once the game was over, if you listen to the commentators talk about Alvaro, all you heard them say was, he's such an underrated asset to this team. He's a versatile striker who'll drop in, he presses efficiently, he's considered an absolute workhorse by his teammates. He'll sacrifice himself if he has the capacity to do what we were missing last season through Olivier Giroud. He tried to drop deep, but he didn't have the age or the speed to really be able to do much with the ball when he dropped in. Morata is pretty much the exact opposite. He still has his speed to him. He's known to be a player who will drop deep and facilitate the wingers. A signing like Morata, it might not be sexy, it might not be a high price tag, but if this is a player that can get better out of a personality like Rafael Leao, better out of a personality like Samuel Chukwueze or Christian Pulisic, isn't that a good enough signing? As some journalists were talking about, if he can get these players to score 18 to 20 goals for your team, he becomes an important asset. It's not just about pay 50 million so this particular striker can score 25 goals for you. Sometimes it's about how can he elevate the team around him. If you watch the Euros, you understand his movements, him driving the center backs out of their positions, then engaging players like Nico Williams and Lamine Yamal. A lot of those wingers' successes in these Euros came because of the presence and because of the movements of somebody like Morata. So the one request I have for the Milan fan base is don't just look at price tags and age and make 100% judgment on a particular profile. If we're just going to look at price tags, I'm going to have to go back to the point of who did we replace Donnarumma with? A 13 million euro purchase of Mike Maignan. Who replaced Ibrahimovic on this team? A 1 million euro purchase of Olivier Giroud, who at that point in time was 34 years old? And that's what Morata does. He presses, he drops in deep, but he also scores goals. Because the one question that was being asked about Zirkzee was that he's a great profile to drop in. He can actually control the ball and make a run to goal. But is he a player who's going to give you a bunch of goals? Because last season he only scored 10. In comparison, Morata, in an equally tough La Liga, scored the most goals this time around than he ever has in his entire career. Now, the one area that I can understand a little bit of criticism on this whole Morata deal is the kind of contract that he's been handed. Now, his salary is going to be 5.5 million a year, which will make him one of the highest paid players on this team. The problem that I maybe have a little bit more is his contract length. Now, he does have a deal till 2028, but there's also an additional year's option that stretches this out till 2029. Now, this player in October will be turning 32. Stretching this out to 2028, this player is going to be 36. Add another year to that, he's going to be 37 by the time his deal is over. So an annual salary of 5.5 million going out to a 37-year-old, that's the one thing that I look at, it kind of raises my eyebrows. But when it comes to what this player will be able to do for this team on the field, I'm very much looking forward to what Morata does. Giroud had deteriorated in his link-up play and also in his finishing. With Joshua Zirkzee, link-up play good, some question marks still there about his finishing. With Alvaro Morata, we get a player who can do both of those things pretty well. And then there's a transfer of Joshua Zirkzee to Manchester United. The first question mark that a lot of Milan fans started asking was, why is the fact that United was able to agree on a commission payment of 10 million to Kia Joorabchian, whereas they were not going to budge from that 15 million commission amount with Milan? What is with the executives at Manchester United, and why are the executives at Milan incompetent where they weren't able to get this commission amount lowered? Guys, the devil is really in the details. Nobody's incompetent or super smart here. It's just how they manipulated the numbers. So the price tag that Milan had told Bologna that they're going to be paying was 40 million for his release clause. That was his release amount. Milan said they're going to trigger that release clause, pay that 40 million. Manchester United came in and said the same thing, but eventually they decided that they wanted a deal on how the transfer fee was actually paid. They decided that they wanted to make the payments in 3 installments. So instead of triggering the release clause at 40 million, they decided to pay a price of 45 million in 3 different payments. Now, why did they add that extra 5 million? Probably because Bologna said, hey, if you're gonna split this into 3 different payments, we want there to be some incentive for us to accept this deal, which is why they came up with that 45 million number instead of the 40 million that Milan was gonna pay. And then when it comes to the agent's commissions, it's truly about the fact that his salary at Manchester United is different. Kia Joorabchian wanted 15 million from Milan. He agreed to 10 million from Manchester United. AC Milan was willing to offer a contract to Joshua Zirkzee, according to some reports, of 5 million a season. Manchester United, on the other hand, agreed to a contract of 6.5 million a season. What this means is that the club is paying 1.5 million more in gross payments. You factor that over a period of 4 or 5 years, that's an extra payment and salary of almost 6-7 million euros, which is why this journalist assessed that that extra 5 million that Joorabchian was asking Milan, that 5 million was actually going to go to the player as probably a kickback. And because his salary at Manchester United was higher, the agent just kept the 10 million in commissions that he always was going to only keep. So anybody saying that Milan's management were poor negotiators and not being able to lower that commission amount, you just have to understand how the deal was actually structured with United. Now, multiple reports have suggested that following the conclusion of the Alvaro Morata move, the next profile Milan is going to go full steam ahead for is Youssouf Fofana. The roadblock with the Fofana situation, as we're going to talk about with, all the other profiles that Milan is considering, is price negotiation, Milan looking for a deal. Now, there was a report that Nottingham Forest had made an offer for Fofana for 30 million euros that was turned down by Monaco, probably because the player didn't want to actually make a move there. It has been said that Monaco wanted somewhere around that 25 million mark. Reports have suggested that Milan has made an offer around 12 to 15 million. So they're still quite a distance away from getting this deal done. Now, the one thing that kind of falls into favor for Milan, as also reported by Gazzetta dello Sport, the player himself has talked about it, is that he only has a year left on his contract, as I've talked about in every single video. He's already told his management that he won't be renewing, so the management could get a little bit desperate. The only problem that Milan is creating for themselves in this situation is because they're lowballing, because they're going in so low, they're giving an opportunity for these news media reports to pick up these players' profiles, and for other teams that don't have the same type of recruitment or scouting systems as Milan to kind of step in and be able to make that deal and pay that extra amount, that 4 or 5 million euros that Milan is essentially seeking a discount for. Because it has been said that the amount that initially Monaco wanted was somewhere around 25 million euros, but reportedly that has come down to now 20 million euros. Some are hoping that because Milan didn't spend 40 million on Joshua Zirkzee, they saved that money by spending it on Alvaro Morata instead. They can use some of those funds towards making up for that 4 or 5 million euro difference. Now, is that actually going to happen? We're going to have to wait to see, because now there's some news that has broken that I just mentioned. You don't want other clubs to step in. Looks like there is a club that stepped in. Atletico Madrid reportedly has made contact with Fofana's entourage just to inquire and see if the player would be open to making a move to La Liga. There hasn't been, significant reporting about what Fofana's entourage response to Atletico Madrid has been. But as I said, if you're gonna be, nickel and diming them for 4 or 5 million euros in the context of things, you will give an opening for other clubs to step in, just the same way that Manchester United stepped in when it came to Joshua Zirkzee. So at this point in time, Fofana to Milan, naturally this report has to be stamped as real. This is very much a real profile and a real possibility. But the only thing that I would say is that Milan has to create some degree of urgency when it comes to pursuing these profiles. To be honest, it is fair to say, yes, the guy has 1 year left on his contract with Monaco, but his value is definitely more than an 18 million euro deal if Milan can get it. So you're already getting a bargain on the player. At some point in time, you just want to get these deals over the line so you can pursue the next profile and complete your mercato. And then there's Strahinja Pavlovic, another profile, pretty much an identical story as Fofana. Now, ever since news reports have come out by Fabrizio Romano, by Niclas Fullkrug, that this is a profile Milan are pursuing, guess who steps in? A bunch of Premier League clubs. Now, Chelsea are also said to be interested in the player, and another club that was chasing Milan's own center back in Malik Tau in the past has competed with Milan for Sven Botman in Newcastle United, is also interested in this player. So allowing these leaks to happen and then taking so long to negotiate that you allow all these other richer clubs to step in, this is something that Milan and its management are going to have to mitigate. Either you create a structure where these names are not leaked, or you accept that you're going to have to pay up a little bit more to just get these deals over the line. The one deal that I can remember from the recent past, from last summer transfer window, that almost no news outlets had talked about was the Noah Okafor move. Whoever was involved in that transaction, from Milan's side and from Okafor's side, that's the group that you kind of want to try and work with on a regular basis. And it just so happens that the management and the other club that were involved in the Okafor deal was exactly these groups. It was a transfer that came from RB Salzburg. Now, Niclas Fullkrug is reporting that Milan have prepped a contract for Strahinja Pavlovic around that 1.8 million net per season. Essentially, the only part of the negotiation that is left, just like with all the other players, is an agreement with the club. The club wants 30 million, and surprise, surprise, Milan wants a discount. Now, Niclas Fullkrug did say that a 5 million, somewhere around that 5 million mark discount is possible, because Milan have been communicated by Salzburg that at a minimum, they want 25 to 30 million for this player. So as soon as Milan heard 25 million, they said, hey, let's stay in that region. Let's not go closer to 30. Let's bring it down to about 20 million. And now that is what is being said is the difference is. They want 30 million, Milan wants to offer 20 million. Now, will this deal actually get over the line? When it comes to the report, I mean, I'm gonna have to stamp this as real, because it's as real as it can be. But is this actually gonna happen? I mean, with watching Chelsea step in, watching Newcastle step in, you seriously hope that if Milan can get this deal over the line ASAP, that's the only way to lock down this player. Because it is being said that the player is also interested, but how many times are we gonna depend and rely on the player's will? And I'm with the Milan fans. Whoever gets frustrated with how long these negotiations drag on for, I get your point. I get your frustration. And then there's the name of the third striker profile for this Milan team. It was always known with Giroud's departure that Milan was likely going to be signing two strikers. Alvaro Morata to Milan is done. You still have Luka Jovic, possibly. Now, everybody knows about the reports that have been floating around about Tammy Abraham making a move to Milan. We've talked about how he did have an injury issue all of last season. In his first season, I believe he scored about 27 goals. So clearly this guy at one point in time had the capacity to score a bunch of goals in the league. Does he still have the same form? Does he still have the same fitness after that injury? At the end of the day, he's only 26 years old, so he can really find both of them back again. It's still, there's a degree of uncertainty if that's going to be the case. Tammy Abraham's profile, by some reports, is considered to be more preferable because there could be a player exchange involved in it. Alexis Salamakers could make a move to Roma. Tammy Abraham comes to Milan along with some cash being sent to Roma's side. But if you were to ask Sky Germany, they would say Niclas Füllkrug's profile is the one that Milan prefers over Tammy Abraham. Last season, Füllkrug scored 15 goals for Borussia Dortmund, assisted 10 goals in a Champions League finals run. The latest reporting from Gianluca Di Marzio suggesting that Niclas Füllkrug has actually agreed to a move to Milan. This is an interesting wording of the news report. So it doesn't say that there's an agreement on personal terms or a contract. There isn't an agreement with Borussia Dortmund. The understanding is that when Milan started to evaluate profiles they wanted to sign as center forwards, Füllkrug was one of the players that they put on their list. Now, for that reason, they started making contacts to the player's entourage. He did make a Champions League final, so they first wanted to get an idea. Wait, do you actually want to make a move here if we come for you? And I think that's where the Gianluca Di Marzio reporting comes into play, because what that report is suggesting is that the entourage met with Milan or spoke with Milan, had a good conversation. The player likes the project and the idea of moving to Milan, and he's now given them the go-ahead to start the negotiation process with Borussia Dortmund. It is being reported that the asking price that Dortmund does want is about 15 million. This is a player that is 31 years old. We have players like Youssouff, Fofana, who have an evaluation around 25-30, Pavlovic 25-30. Milan's giving them 10 million euro offers. So I think this deal, very likely, if Milan wants it to be done, I get the sense they might actually pursue this in single digits. But at the end of the day, this is a player that had 26 goal contributions last season. So even a 15 million price tag, if you can bring it somewhere around that 12 million, 11 million mark, I think Milan might actually do it. So at this point in time, unexpectedly, the Niclas Fullkrug move to Milan, we're gonna have to stamp this as possible. And you might even put it one level above possible. That Tammy Abraham move, especially with a possible new injury for the player, I think that is unlikely, especially with Roma asking for Noah Okafor in that deal, which certainly increases the possibility of Niclas Füllkrug coming to Milan. And then there's a profile of Lazar Samardzic. Now, this is a bit confusing. The same report is saying that he is an alternative to Youssouf Fofana, which is very strange because he has a completely different playing style than Youssouf Fofana. Fofana is much more defensive. Samardzic is comparatively much more attacking than Fofana. Gazzetta dello Sport is reporting this. Most of the times I find them to be a little bit more sensationalistic than realistic. And now some of the reports are saying that, hey, Gazzetta dello Sport's reporting was actually pretty good, as the next day Fabrizio Romano comes out, Matteo Moretto comes out and says Milan is actually interested in this player. And that is what the initial understanding of the Samardzic reports was, that he's actually going to be a replacement in case of Fofana move not completing. But latest reporting from Gianluca Di Marzio suggests that it's not one or the other, it's actually both. Youssouf Fofana will remain Milan's main target as a central defensive midfielder, and Lazar Samardzic is a player that Milan sees an opportunity to be able to sign. It's not going to cost a lot, and they believe that that's something they should jump on, not just to fill in certain holes that Milan might have, but actually to reinforce certain departments, in this case, the midfield department. This essentially would require outgoing moves. Yassin Adli's time at Milan would be done if Samardzic comes here. You almost can't see any space for Tommaso Pobega, but there might also be a chance that Ismail Benacer moves away from the club. And I think that's where this move might stain the balance. We actually don't know how this outcome is going to be, because the reporting is saying that Milan would have to make some outgoing moves first, clear out more of their midfield before they can actually make a move on Samardzic. So initially I thought this was pretty much a rumor. I was even going to stamp it as a rumor, but at this point in time, I think it's a move that can happen for now because there have been no outgoing moves of players. This might be a move that might come towards the latter stages of the Mercato. So for those reasons, right now, I'm gonna call this as unlikely. Could it happen? Sure, but I think a lot of other moves have to first come into play before this can be executed. And there you have it, Milanisti. Those are some of the profiles you want to take a look at today. It's consistently been the same players that we're getting linked to, which means that there's definitely something there. At this point in time, in my opinion, the priority for Milan will likely be Pavlovic and Fofana, since they've already made a striker signing. And these were the three roles Milan wanted to fill in. So having filled in the center forward role, and because of that, I believe they're more likely to go after a central defensive midfielder and a center back before any other profiles. Make sure to let me know in the comment section. Actually, please make sure to rate the Alvaro Morata move to Milan out of 10. Give me your reasonings, and as always from my side, Forza Milan, grazie mille, ciao tutti. This is the same coach that once walked into a Champions League press conference wearing the Mask of Zorro costume. But one of the biggest questions on the minds of Milan fans is, what are his tactics? What kind of systems does he play with? What kind of formation does he implement? So let's bring out the tactical board and dive right in.